Breathe in. Breathe out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the PHNX Suns Podcast presented by Bet365. Download the Bet365 app, use that code PHNX365 when you sign out and find out why, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. I'm Lindsay, that's Gerald, that's Steven, that's Eric, and you guys, today we are going to dive into some misconceptions about the team. That's a Gerald Bourget special. Shout out to Gerald for coming up with that one. I just stole it.
As someone who's going to be a dad, I'm allowed to do it now. So I don't want to hear anyone say anything about
yet.
it. Oh,
not
yeah.
Yet.
I'm there.
That man said
you've been there.
What was the excuse for the last 25 years?
None of your business.
It was all preparation.
Definitely was.
Michael said, what has changed overnight in reference to the title of this podcast episode called Calm Down. Here's why the Phoenix Suns don't suck.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're going to dive into that, Michael. We're feeling a little bit better. We got a good night's sleep last night. We got 5 days between now and the next time the Suns play basketball. Hopefully we'll be healthy again at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to give you a couple reasons why we think the Suns don't suck. But don't worry. We'll also dive into some things they absolutely do need to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So first misconception about the Suns is that we should blow it up.
Yeah.
And blowing it up is our only option and our only path forward to find success. Are you guys in on this misconception or are you out?
Yeah, it's a big misconception. First of all, it is not even Thanksgiving yet. We're talking about blowing up the team. Second, I just put way more stock in what we've seen in the first 9 games of the season when this team was healthy versus the last 7 when you've been missing 2 of your best 3 players. You take 2 of your best 3 players away from any roster in the NBA, they're going to struggle, especially against the slate that the Suns have had, both in terms of the frequency of their games and the fact that they've been playing some good competition. It's kind of crazy to see people reach for the blow it all up button. I think those people have been reaching for that button over and over every time that something bad happens over the last year because they didn't like trading Mikal or Cam Johnson, or they didn't like trading Chris Paul, and they've just been waiting for a reason to abandon ship. Or
DA or Monty or whatever.
Right.
There were a lot of pieces that got moved over the last couple of years, and a lot of people had a huge affinity for some of those pieces.
Right, which is fair, but I think we still need to be able to take emotion out of it and look at it and say, guys, they're still 9-7. Mm-hmm. They did give themselves a nice little cushion, as Devin Booker said, and there's still plenty of time to get healthy and turn this thing around again.
Go ahead.
I mean, the first 9 games were rather loud, I would say, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure where the blow it up conversations are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, we got context as an updated version of what the Suns' record was when all 3 of those players have been in the lineup together versus when they're not. I know it's a little bit of a dice roll considering some of the health that's preceded a few of the players in that big 3, but for one thing, Matt Ishbia spent this money on this team not looking to blow it up 2 months into the season where they went 8-1 in their first 9 games and looked like the literal best team in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
You also just got a brand new head coach that's not aligned with losing, not intentionally especially. Mm-hmm. There's no way that anything that's happened since Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant exited the rotation that could be louder than what we saw to start the season.
Well, I mean, let's just hypothetically say the Phoenix Suns decide to blow it up, right? You're trading 1, 2, all 3 of your superstars for an insane amount of draft picks, and then we can all sit back here and be like, man, the Suns had 3 superstars and they traded them all for draft picks. I don't want to wait for draft picks to develop. I want them to win right now. It sucks because you're supposed to be winning this season. You're supposed to, with all of these chips on the table. It's like, oh, we were so good, and all of a sudden you've hit this rock bottom so quickly. But things can change so fast, and the last thing you want to do is make a rash decision, one that's going to impact the future of your franchise for the next 5 to 10 years. And maybe blowing it up is trading everybody but Devin Booker. Does Devin Booker want that? Do the other players want that? Is that something where big-time free agents in the next upcoming summers say, oh, well, I'll sign a long-term contract there, but if I'm not successful in the first year or two, they're going to ship me off? Like, people come here because they want to live here. They want to play here. They want to be here. If you just pull the plug on something for not a lot of value, if you're making these trades, you're making them for worse value than what you traded them for, it doesn't make sense. I think the blowing up conversation that does make sense is as far as like, well, do you want to shuffle around role players? I get the theory and the understanding behind that. But again, in actuality, it's hard to execute. There are so many things that go against blowing it up.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit for some context, right? Shuffling around some of the role players. I'm not against that at all. I'm not against this team making moves that make sense for them. But we also have to remember a lot of our role players cannot be moved until December 15th anyway. So we're going to have to sit back and wait at least a little while. So Bol, Tyus Jones, Damian Lee, Monte Morris, Royce O'Neal, Mason Plumlee cannot be traded until at least December 15th. Bol and Damian Lee also have trade veto rights. So if the team wanted to move on from one of those two guys or both of them, they could be like, no, I'm going to hang out here. Sorry, not sorry.
Right.
So that's something to keep in mind. Now, in addition to that, let's dive into some other things that happen around trades and moves and things of that nature. Let's just talk about draft picks real quick. The Suns have 3 draft picks they can play with right now as far as utilizing them in some sort of a trade or trade package. The 2026 second-round pick that they got from Denver, the 2031 second-round pick from Denver, and their own 2031 first-round pick. Now, they do have additional picks that they will have in that time frame, but they cannot use them as trade pieces. So that's all we've got right now. And knowing that's all we got, you have to be strategic and make sure that this move is actually going to be a move that will benefit you in the now and hopefully in the long run, because you ain't got anything else to play with once they're gone.
Right. If you're talking about blowing it up, you have to understand that involves trading either Kevin Durant, who wants to be here, who Suns ownership has said they want to give him an extension after this upcoming season, extend him for 2 years, and ideally him finish his career here. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But in terms of the near future, they want him around for at least 2 more years after this season, and Kevin Durant still wants to be here. So you're looking at Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. Blowing it up would be trading Bradley Beal, who has a no-trade clause that he can veto any trade. And even if you found a trade for him as a second tax apron team, you cannot take back more money than you are sending out in any trade. You can't combine outgoing players to stack salary in any trade. You can take 2 back and send 1 out, but you can't send multiple guys out and get 1 in return. So you're in a really tough situation there because Bradley Beal's trade value isn't great right now. He's a good player. But because of his contract, because of the injury history, especially recently, he's not going to get you a lot in return. If anything, to trade him, you might have to attach draft capital to him. So are you going to spend the last tradable pick that you have to trade Bradley Beal and get what in return exactly? Like 1 first-round pick and Bradley Beal is probably not getting you a piece that's better than Bradley Beal right now.
Because Bradley Beal is also determining where he goes, which, as you saw with the Phoenix Suns, you can probably get somebody for below market value if they're choosing where they want to go. Like, you can hate on Bradley Beal right now, but what the Suns traded for Bradley Beal was well below what Bradley Beal is worth, especially as far as, like, sure, he has a big contract, but his production on the court, his age, his future prospects, obviously, you know, we're sitting here now and some people regret that trade. But you weren't getting anything near that level of player for a package of Chris Paul and Landry Shamet.
Right.
You know? So who are you moving Bradley Beal on for? Nobody that's helping you in the current, and probably not really any massive picks soon. You're going to be trading him for picks similar to the 2031 pick. Like, Steven, is that something that you feel like that you're here now? You've seen this fan base and how they kind of react to things. Do you think waiting until the 2030s to rebuild off of trading Bradley Beal now is something that fans would like?
Well, I've been aware of how Suns fans operate. Don't short me on that. We're not
That's
new
fair.
to this. We very much true to this.
That's
thing.
fair.
He said, "I
And
know
the roller
crazy."
coaster- correct. Yes, Gerald. My thing is they've swung for the fences already. There's no more grand slams. There's no more home runs. There's no more triples that they can hit. They might be able to find a double or a single, but they might even be able to get walked in terms of finding a veteran minimum type of contract that they can, bring into their context. But there's no more moves for them to make. This is what they have. This is what they've literally invested in monetarily, and they've invested in terms of bringing in another head coach to appease the context of the team that Matt Ishbia has constructed. There's no outs. You're 10 toes down about this, and you have to make this work. The best way to make something happen is on the margins. They're not going to look at anything in that top 3 and be looking to move any of those players.
And I think to that point as well, like we're talking about this from a fan perspective, do you really want to wait to rebuild and all this stuff? Does Devin Booker want to wait? Because he doesn't, and neither does ownership. They're not coming in here to suddenly tear it all down, this team that they've assembled after trying it for a season and 2 months and saying, well, we don't think it's going to work, so we're going to tear it down. Devin Booker, hope you're happy with Ryan Dunn, Oso, and a bunch of draft picks and role players for the next 3 to 4 years. That is how you push a superstar player, the face of your franchise, out of town. I think it's more realistic where they give this current iteration another, like this season, maybe next season as well, to figure things out. They're going to tweak on the margins. I definitely think that. I think nobody outside of the big 3 is safe at this point. But if you're the Suns and you do need to move on from this current iteration, it's going to look a lot more like a retool than a rebuild. This team, as long as they have Devin Booker, until the day that Devin Booker goes into the front office and says, I don't want to be here anymore, they are going to try to get this guy to a championship caliber team and roster. Whether that's how they do it, that's going to be very tough because of the lack of draft picks and stuff. But they do still have draft pick every other year. It's just undetermined where that's going to be because of pick swaps.
Right. So go ahead.
I just want to say one last thing is what Gerald mentioned about having like a superstar to build around, and that's not going to change. Like that's a good thing. Yeah. Like you want that as a franchise. I know Humble Rumble in the chat says, I just want to start from scratch.
Why?
You don't want to.
But then they also said we could trade Booker for a star. So you do need a star.
But that's the thing is, if you need a star, stick around the guy who's been in your franchise for a decade and that other players clearly want to play with. Like having Devin Booker and having the expectations that come along with Devin Booker will always be a good thing for this team.
Okay, so Michael in the chat and the Rickety Bridge second did this one. They said, I have a question. When can we get back to normal trades? 2030? So normal meaning not in the second tax apron. And I think there is technically a possibility in that 26-27 year that you could dip back down.
It depends.
It just depends on what they do with the extensions and Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal and all that.
It's too early to say, especially with Bradley Beal's player option, if he's had enough here or if the Suns and him come to understanding that they need to part ways and he opts out, then that drastically changes your outlook for that summer. But yeah, it'll be a season or two before we're dealing with that. They've kind of pointed to the summer of, I think it's 2026 when, you get a chance to kind of reshuffle, evaluate what they've done. And if they need to go a different direction, they will at that point in time. So it'll be a minute. They do have these restrictions that they're going to have to work around, which makes it tough to tinker. But again, you're looking at retooling, not rebuilding.
Speaking of restrictions, let's talk a little bit about that because I have seen some people over the last week and a half throw out some trade ideas and ask if these type of things could work. Obviously, the top one that everyone is asking about is Giannis because of the turmoil that is happening over in their neck of the woods. So unfortunately, because the Suns are a second tax apron team, and if we make a trade, like say KD, Booker, Beal, and the guy coming back in, it has to be dollar for dollar, or we can take less. But correct me if I'm wrong, Gerald, the Milwaukee Bucks are also a second tax apron team, which means the dollar for dollar has to go both ways. Giannis Antetokounmpo makes $48,787,676 this season. That's his cap hit. Everybody on our team makes more than that. So it's a no-go. It can't happen. You can't, even if Bradley Beal was like, send me over there, I'm good. It can't happen. That's an unfortunate situation. Then I saw Joel Embiid's name get tossed out there. Now, they are a first apron team, but we can't take back any more salary than what we send out because we're still a second tax apron team. He makes $51,415,938. Kevin Durant makes less than that, and he's our highest salary athlete on the team. So that wouldn't work either, even if it was KD who you offered up, which I wouldn't do that either. So the math just doesn't math there. Jimmy Butler has been tossed out. He makes $48,798,677. Technically, because they are a first apron team, that could work. Are you guys interested in that? It would have to be for Book.
No, and I don't think the Heat would be. Why are you getting older and more injury prone with Jimmy Butler? That's making a move to make a move. It doesn't make sense. And if you're trading Devin Booker, it is to rebuild. Like it is. So no, I'm not doing that. I don't think the Heat are doing. I actually do think the Heat are doing that.
Trading Jimmy Butler for Devin Booker.
But you cannot make a trade where you're taking back more salary as a team in the first apron because then it triggers the second apron. So there's that to consider as well for them. None of these are realistic. Like any team that's in the second apron, you're going to have to find a third team to facilitate where both of those teams in the second apron are not taking back more money than they're sending out. So Giannis, Embiid, all these other star names that we're throwing out there, none of them are realistic because of where their teams are at in the tax apron territory.
I have a couple more. First one is from the chat. Wow Factor said Grayson Allen for Cam Johnson. A couple people were saying they would absolutely do that because Cam's been lighting it up in Brooklyn. Sorry, no can do. Grayson Allen makes $15,625,000. Cam Johnson makes $23,625,000. That's a hard no.
Yep. So basically, if you're trying to trade Grayson, the player that you're trying or players you're trying to trade him for have to make less combined than $15.6 million. If you're trying to trade Yusuf Nurkic, the player you're trying to get in return has to make less than his $18.1 million. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
Yes.
I think the overarching point, which we spoke to pre-pod, I hope that everyone is understanding the constraints in which the Suns are operating in. They don't have any room for creativity, really. Like I said a couple minutes ago, they made their home run swing, they made their triple swing, they even made their double swings. It's going to be dink and dunk on the margins for them to try to build out the rest of their rotation outside of the big three at this point.
I really just feel like you're at the point where you have to come to acceptance on all of this and understand that this is a front office that is constantly trying to put this team in the best position to win. And they're going to do whatever they can. They hired the best people to figure that out. But there's just a certain extent that they can go to, and their hands are tied in certain ways as well. It sucks, but that's just the reality that we're all living in.
All right, I have one more, and then we'll dive into some other misconceptions. But first, we're going to take a quick break. This holiday season, you can elevate your brand or your look with our friends at Branded Bills. They have the perfect headwear and apparel for your needs. Snapbacks, they got it. Truckers, they got it. Fitteds, beanies, t-shirts, they got it. Branded Bills has you covered with performance and style. And my favorite part is they're a local company. They're from Mesa, Arizona. We love supporting local. They also have partnerships with ASU, U of A as a part of their campus collection. And so if you're looking for some gear to make your brand stand apart from the crowd, Branded Bills has you covered with the best custom headwear. Start your order and their dedicated team will help you create the exact custom apparel that you need. Plus, right now, you can head to brandedbills.com and use the code PHNX for 20% off your first order. That's code PHNX for 20% off at brandedbills.com.
We had a wonderful watch party out at Wild Horse Pass over the weekend. If you weren't there, we will have more going forward, but it's not just our watch parties, the Cardinals away game watch parties over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. It's everything because truly nobody does it better. Not just at Wild Horse Pass, but Lone Butte, Vequiva, Santan Mountain. They have an experience, whether it's just a night out, you want to hit the live table games, maybe go to their sports book, grab a quick drink with your friends, or you want a staycation, a longer experience, maybe get away with family or away from family. And you can do that by maybe poolside dining, rooftop steaks, maybe burgers, pizza, see a show. They just have everything. But the only rule, there's one big rule there, and it's that you do you. At Gila River Resorts and Casinos, they have over 4,500 slots and live table games, which is one of the biggest in the state. They have the best experience in the state when it comes to these in-person events that we are going to be hosting, and you can see all of this over at playathila.com for more details.
Okay, so the last one that I have for you guys here. This one works dollar for dollar, okay? Yay or nay? Devin Booker and his Devin Booker and his $205,800 paycheck for Paul George because they match exactly. This is the only big ticket one that I have seen so far that matches dollar for dollar exactly. Yay or nay?
The Sixers do that in a heartbeat.
If I wanted a podcast about my team, I'd listen to this one, not Podcast P. Okay, come on.
Oh, man.
I that would test my fandom.
Yeah.
That would test my fandom. If they traded Devin Booker for Paul George, which is maybe the most ridiculous sentence I've ever said in my entire life, I might have to question what team I support. No chance. Zero chance.
Nope.
I was just trying to create a little bit of
I
context.
know you were.
For
Oh, you did.
I know you were.
Let everybody realize.
The entire chat is just throwing up.
Those are some of the things that we are up against right now when it comes to specifically blowing it up. And in my opinion, blowing it up is one of your big three.
Yes.
You want to tinker around the edges. We obviously need to do something with our center position. I am all for that. I'm specifically utilizing this exercise to explain to the people who want to move on from Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, or some variation of the three, why that is not going to happen.
Yep.
That was the whole purpose of this exercise.
Correct.
They're also really good players. I know that nobody wants to hear that. I know that them being injured sucks, but they're not bad players. I mean, you just said Paul George. The Sixers would do that in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because Devin Booker is a good player.
Yeah. And he's younger.
Yes.
And he's healthier.
Yeah.
And he's not doing podcasts whenever they have a team, a players only meeting.
The most insane thing in the world, like the leaks from our team meeting and like a podcast, like come on, dude.
And to the point of that, Devin Booker is still a good player. Another misconception, Steven, Devin Booker has regressed or is no longer an elite player. This is a misconception that we are seeing a lot this season. How do you feel about it?
Well, to paint the picture.
I'm ready.
You take the 1B or 1A from any other player that's the top two on their respective team, they're going to operate differently. Steph Curry operates differently with Draymond Green's not on the floor. You can apply this context to literally any other star across the entire NBA. Why is that so different when it comes to Devin Booker? I will never understand it. We've seen Nikola Jokic look even the slightest bit different when Jamal Murray misses games, and even more drastically vice versa. Like, there's just so many examples of that. And I just want people to understand that if you take away these elite level talents that make up for over 50% of your scoring outside of Devin Booker, that makes things extremely tough for him because, for one, the context he's playing in is completely shifted. For two, the defenses are not looking at you the same way that they would when you got Devin or Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal or both on the floor with you at the same time. You're playing a complete different game. Whereas once you're playing chess with people, now everybody's playing Connect Four with you because they can just put these pieces here and not have to worry about anything else outside of that for the most part. And if they do, they can just live with that because it's not you that's putting the ball in the basket.
And I feel like some people get confused when you criticize Book, or not just you, but like the royal you, or tell him that he could be better, that he needs to do more in this situation, and then immediately say that equals that Devin Booker sucks now and he's a worse basketball player. Devin Booker is just as good of a basketball player as he was 365 days ago, as he was 2 years ago, as he was 5 years ago. He's that good. In fact, he's still getting better in multiple different aspects of the game. But he's not perfect. And in these situations, when you are the sole star in the spotlight and your team is on a losing streak it hasn't seen in years, you're going to get the focus from the fans, from the people covering you, and probably from opposing teams as well. You can still tell Devin Booker that he needs to be better. You can still think that he might need to shift some things in his game. It doesn't mean that Devin Booker just all of a sudden is bad at basketball. Like those two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, and I think, like we've talked about this before, but the context of the coverages that he's seeing is important. The lack of shot making that's been around him over this 7-game stretch where they've really struggled is important. And it's just important to take a step back and recognize that as much as Devin Booker is a superstar, he's not a matchup proof S-tier superstar like a Nikola Jokic, a Giannis, a Steph Curry, guys that no matter who's on the floor, they can find a way to make an impact. That's not to say that Devin Booker is bad or anything like that, but he's just a slight step below those guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, you take 2 of a team's top 3 best players away and have their second best player out there and expect him to lead the team to a bunch of wins or to high scoring performances. Most players in the NBA outside of the ones that I just named are going to struggle with that. It just comes with that territory. And they've been facing, like I said, number 1 defense in the NBA, number 2 defense in the NBA, last year's best defense. Like, they have had some pretty good opponents that have played him really well, and you got to give credit there too. And the last thing that I had is, like, to the point about the shot making thing. Like, I wrote about this over at gophnx.com when I was writing about the break and how much some of these guys really need it, not just from a health perspective, but from a mental perspective of, like, just resetting and getting back on track once they return. Royce O'Neal in the first 9 games was shooting 53% overall, 53% from 3. Over the last 7, 30% from the floor, 30% from 3. You look at Ryan Dunn, he went from 39% from 3 to 27%. Yusuf Nurkic went from averaging like 11 and 11 on 47% shooting to 5 points, 9 rebounds, and 26% shooting. Like, how is Devin Booker supposed to carry an offense when all of these guys have been virtual non-threats, have failed to make shots to spread the floor? These are all things that you need these role players, and when they're bumped up in the pecking order with guys going out, to step up. And they haven't. So it's a collective failure here. It's not just Devin Booker is bad at basketball now.
But the good news is, if we're trying to be positive,
yes,
when Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal come back, all those role players move back into their normal spot.
Yes.
And hopefully the numbers revert back to what we saw at the beginning of the season. I mean, Royce O'Neal is a prime example, Steven. You've brought that up multiple times, how Kevin Durant not being out there directly impacts Royce O'Neal and what he's able to bring night in and night out.
Yes, exactly. The style of shots, the cadence at which those shots are generated, even the functionality of a role player like Royce O'Neal completely shifts. Steve Jones Jr. was on our show earlier this week, and he perfectly laid out an example that Gerald's spoken to, that I've spoken to. I'm sure Eric's mentioned it as well. He talked about specifically Royce O'Neal being in dribble handoff scenarios, and how when that's Kevin Durant, that's a lot harder to navigate for opponents because it's Kevin Durant involved in it. Whoever is guarding him is not going to want to switch and concede their defensive responsibilities to Royce O'Neal, because that then creates a mismatch for Kevin Durant, which naturally is going to end up in a bucket, or someone's going to have to commit extra help, which is then going to open up someone else for either a wide open catch and shoot opportunity, or it's going to be Bradley Beal or Devin Booker working in an advantage with the defense tilted. When you take Kevin Durant out of that, Royce O'Neal goes to go into a dribble handoff with, let's say, Ryan Dunn, let's say even Devin Booker. It's just going to be a switch. The defense is flattening you out, and now you're wasting time on the shot clock at that point.
Well, and let's be very clear here. If Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant come back and the role players shoot the way the role players have been shooting since they're out, this team ain't winning a championship.
Right.
Like, you can have all the star power you want in the world, and that can only take you so far. If Royce O'Neal is going to shoot sub 40% from the field and low 30s from 3 for the entire season, if Ryan Dunn isn't going to, average out a little bit on the shooting department, if Grayson Allen isn't going to get back to at least relatively close to where he was the year before, you're not going to win a championship. That's why it was so important that this offseason the Suns did make moves around the margins, right? You bring back a Grayson and a Royce, and then you get a Tyus and a Monte and a Mason Plumlee, because that's what held you back last year, along with health, because even when the guys were playing, they didn't get enough from everybody else. So if that's the case with all 3 stars, if you have 1 star and they're doing that, it becomes that much more of a dire situation.
And if we come across that scenario closer to the end of December, then we'll fire up the trade machine.
Yeah,
guys.
Right.
Let's do it.
And that's why, for the people saying 16 games in and they need a break, yeah, man, they played 12 games in 21 days, which is the most in the NBA, tied for the most in the NBA out of any team that anyone's played. Like, and especially when you lose 5 straight and 6 out of 7, yeah, it mentally takes a toll. We're seeing it a little bit in the body language right now. They needed this break to get back in the lab, to practice, and to get back to basics and hopefully get healthy, because that's the biggest thing we've been talking
And
about.
I'll say too, real quick, just for numerical context, before Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal exited the rotation, the Suns had the 7th best defense in plus or minus. Without those two, they dropped all the way down to 21st. So that's the type of difference and shift with your team. This is all inclusive for how those lineups operate offensively, defensively, and their production in terms of putting the ball in the basket. That's a huge shift. That's a shift from being an elite contending level group to being a group that is probably pieces that are going to get traded by the time the deadline comes around.
All right, we'll dive into some more misconceptions on the other side of a quick break. Our friends at Sanderson Ford are so thankful to have lived and prospered for the last 70 years in Glendale, Arizona. They're thankful for their 500 employees who take care of their customers, making Sanderson Ford America's most awarded Ford dealership. They're also very thankful for you, their customers, because without your support, they couldn't give back and support our community with events like Operation Santa Claus. So they're saying thank you with a Black Friday thank you sale the entire month of November with great offers. So make sure you check them out and don't miss out on some of the amazing deals you can get. You can get a new 2024 Ford F-150 truck with 3.9 APR financing for 66 months, plus up to $4,000 cash back. Similar savings on over 900 new and pre-owned vehicles on the lot. So don't miss the Sanderson Ford Black Friday thank you sale. Disclaimer, OAC through Ford credit, up to $4,000 cash back, requires trade-in of 95 or newer vehicle. Offer expires November 30th.
In most aspects of life, I would say don't try to be like me. But there is one that I would say do that, and that's by using Desert Financial Credit Union, because it's been in my family for literal generations. You cut me open, I bleed. Desert Financial Credit Union.
Let's try.
Yeah, I mean, maybe diehard exclusive content. Hit the like button if you want to see that.
5 days off.
Got to fill content somehow. Desert Financial is here for you through the basics, your checkings, your savings accounts. But then as life gets more complicated, you know, I opened up my first account when I was in high school. I've gone through a lot since then. They've got mortgages, loans, credit cards, investment options, and more. Multiple locations across the valley. Friendly service at all times, whether it's a minor problem, whether it's a big problem, they are here to help take care of you. And on top of all of that, by the way, buried the lead. They want to give you $200. I could use $200. I'm sure you could too. When you open up a free checking account online, get $200 in bonuses. All you have to do is get started by visiting desertfinancial.com/200. And if enough of you tell me that you did it, we'll see if I bleed Desert Financial blue. Okay?
All right, so we do have a question from Leo. Leo said, Nurk to Toronto for Gerald's guy. Hurdle. LOL, it works. Maybe?
Listen,
does it?
Does it, Gerald?
Listen, I am
Leo
the
needs to know.
I am the co-founder of the Purtle Club, but
Purtle.
Yep. Thank you for knowing
The
that.
Purtle people?
Knowing what I was doing with that. But unfortunately, I don't think that actually works, because Jakob Purtle makes $19.5 million. Nurk is only at $18.1. So again, the Suns cannot take back more salary than they are sending out. They also can't stack another salary on top of Nurkic to get above the $19.5 million. So Jakob Purtle is out unless you are trading one of your big three, which you're not doing.
Well, that could maybe be a more realistic 3-team trade. That feels like something where it'd be a lot easier to get a salary to match that than one of the big three.
Well, no, because you can't do it with a 3-team trade either.
You can't do that with a 3-team trade?
No, because you're still sending out only $18.1 million and you're taking in more.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, that one does not work.
Yeah, and 3-team trades can make things a little bit easier. But it's as far as acquiring somebody else,
Right.
but it's much more difficult as far as getting it done.
Yeah.
Because now you got to convince 2 teams to play ball with you
Yeah.
instead of just one.
And even in a 3-team trade, you still have to take back less salary than you're sending out to the third team. Even if you're taking one player from a second team and sending another to a third, whatever player's coming in has to make less than whoever you're sending out.
Also, just throwing this out there as a little bit of a teaser, but I do believe we are going to be doing a mailbag sometime soon.
Monday.
If you have questions like this, like you don't fully understand the different aprons and what we're allowed and not allowed to do even after today's podcast, drop them in as a mailbag and we'll see if we can answer some of them for you. If there's specific players that you're like, this sounds like it makes sense, we'll help you out there a little bit. Okay?
Yes.
There you go.
Keep an eye
That's a
out for
teaser.
that on social tomorrow, on Twitter, on Blue Sky, wherever you're at. We're going to be getting as many questions as we can and then going through the answers with you guys.
Yes. Okay. Next one. Coach Bud is not the right coach for the Suns. We have seen some comments asking for Coach Bud to get fired. Some comments, both facetious and serious, that Frank Vogel should be back. Misconception?
Who said that?
The internet.
If Frank Vogel was here, you wouldn't have your 8-1 start.
No.
You would not be 8-1 to start the season with Frankie V calling the plays.
No.
Sorry.
And that's no disrespect to Frank, but they're two very different coaches in terms of their tactical approach. And yeah, it's just not the same. He doesn't have the same reach in terms of how his personality kind of meshes with the roster that he's inherited. It's just two completely different things.
I again, you look at the 9-game sample size that we're going to be clinging to until we get KD and Bradley Beal back on the court, which is more significant than the 7 games that we've seen. 9 is more than 7. They're healthy, not healthy. But like they addressed a lot of the problem areas structurally that they had last year in terms of like, yes, obviously having Tyus Jones helps cut down on the turnovers thing, but they were top 10 in the league in terms of taking care of the ball before this recent stretch. Defensively, they were very good. They were actually better defensively than offensively. Fourth quarters, the organization there was night and day difference compared to last year when they were, again, one of the worst fourth quarter teams in NBA history since they started tracking fourth quarter data. So like you look at all of the problem areas this team had last year, not taking enough threes, too many turnovers, all of those things. And the Suns have moved to correct those things and made them a part of their identity. So as much as this stretch sucks, you can point to tangible differences between how they play this year and how they play last year and be encouraged by that.
I mean, that's a big difference between Bud and Vogel was that, and I mentioned this before in a recent show, but like you sat down on media day and players were giving legitimate examples about how Mike Budenholzer was already changing their approach, their style, and you've seen it. And yeah, they've lost really good players. If Frank Vogel lost really good players, this team would suck too. Like any coach that loses 2 of their 3 top superstars, especially a top-heavy team like this one, is going to go through it. I think there are some decisions that you can look at since the stars went down with Bud, and you can, maybe question the thought process behind it. But I also think that he's taking his time at the beginning of the season. This is a coach that has won a championship. This is a coach that has been immensely successful in the regular season. He's not going to go out and just, go into desperation mode, less than 20 games into the season, even though this seems like a desperate situation. He started Oso Ighodaro and Mason Plumlee together. He started Yusuf Nurkic and Mason Plumlee together. This is clearly somebody who is trying to not overreact to the current moment and just throw everything out there. He's trying to build and see what works and test and pull guys and strings and see different lineups. And I know it's a tough thing to swallow right now because you want your team to be better and you want them to go all out to win without their superstars. But I don't get that sense of desperation from this team or this coaching staff right now.
Yeah, we're just going to put a pin in that one because even as the chat said, that's such an unserious take, or at least right now.
That's where we're living right now.
So we're going to do that. I am going to just real quickly from the chat. Corey threw out a trade, sending out like 3 or 4 Suns players and getting a couple additional players back, and said that deal works in Real GM Trade Checker. So all of these trade machines don't always take into consideration what apron a team is in, which is why it's important for you to know those rules before you put in the trade, because it will technically say, yeah, it works, but because it's not taking into consideration which apron the Suns sit in and other teams where they are as far as first and second aprons, it won't deny it. So that's why we're trying to continue to preach that, like, you have to fully understand what the limitations of the second tax apron are and what the Suns are up against. Because people will type it into a trade machine and think it can actually happen when, unfortunately, it just can't. It's a bummer.
Use the Fanspo NBA trade machine. That's the closest to taking all these rules into account. But yeah, just be aware. Suns can't send out multiple players in any trade, no matter how many teams are involved in the trade, and they can't take back more money than they're sending out. And that will generally shut down probably 90% of the trade suggestions.
It's a bummer. It is. All right. Next up, let's talk a little defense.
Yeah.
Because that's been a problem. So that's not necessarily a misconception, but I would say maybe we're forgetting that Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal are pretty decent when it comes to playing defense, and that will help when they return?
Well, I think there's this idea that without Beal and KD, like, yes, Devin Booker's life has gotten harder. Yes, guys are missing shots, but like offensively over this stretch, their offense hasn't fallen off too drastically. They went from being the 11th ranked offense in the NBA over the first 9 games to 19th over the last 7, which is obviously not good. But they plummeted from the 9th best defense over those first 9 games to 28th over the last 7. Their defense is what has not held up over this stretch without Kevin Durant, who we know is a great wing defender, and without Bradley Beal, who has been quietly putting in a lot of work on that front.
Yeah, and for me, what stands out in kind of watching the games and rewatching the games and looking at little things within it all, they lack the size, for one, that they had when Kevin Durant is at the 4. Like, we talk about Kevin Durant being 7'1", 7 feet, whatever.
6'9".
6'9", if you ask him.
The most 7 foot, 6'9" player of all time.
As I'm looking up and I'm still going up, and I'm trying to talk to him like, okay, 6'9", cool, I got you, my guy. Yeah, 6'9", we can go with that. But what's undeniable is he has a 7'2", 7'3" wingspan.
Yeah.
So that height combined with that wingspan helps to bridge a gap in terms of your guards and your center when he's on the floor defensively. Your entire defensive outlook is completely different when he's not on the floor. And I think in addition to that, you talk about Bradley Beal and the activity that he brought on ball this season, especially from the perimeter. You take away 2 pieces that are key in all that you're trying to do with your defensive base. You take those 2 out, and you add smaller players, albeit some of them might be more active than Kevin Durant sometimes defensively. Your defense is not going to hit the same. Therefore, you have to shift what your base is. You have to try more things. And I want to credit Mike Budenholzer for that because he's put Oso Ighodaro at the 5 more, and he's winning some more switching, but it's hard to switch when you don't have the size to make up for it on the back end. It's different when Oso's playing with Kevin Durant. He switches onto an opposing 5. Kevin Durant's there on the back end to kick players out of mismatches. When he's not there and they hit it in the post, and you send a double team with Grayson Allen, and that player's being guarded by Josh Okogie, that size is just not hitting the same.
And when you don't have your shot making on the offensive end, like numbers aside, you're making less shots, right? Without Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant, more fast break opportunities for the opposing offense. Less time for you to actually catch your breath a little bit as the ball goes through the hoop and then they inbound it and they walk it up the court and they call a play. No, you're sprinting down to the other end. And over the course of all these games, that takes a toll. And Bradley Beal, is the type of guy to do his own detriment, puts his body on the line, but that creates chaos. And that's something that opposing offenses have to think about. Like, there are so many pieces that are missing all over the place. And then all those pieces just slowly add up. And then over time, they add up even more. It sucks, guys. It sucks.
And
it
it's a trickle-down effect when you're missing those shots because you are going to be less inclined to focus defensively. Yeah. We've seen it from Book in fits and spasms. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's defensible. But when you are having to work your ass off just to get a tough shot, you're missing that shot. Like, we saw a couple examples from last game where he just kind of trotted back down the court in transition. And they got a lot of buckets the Knicks did in transition in that game that kind of blew the game open early. So I do think someone said, damn, we need those 2 to be good on offense and defense. You need all 3. You need all 3. Yes.
But at the very least 2 of them.
Right.
At the very least 2 of them, yes. But that's how this team is built. Love it or not, it is what it is.
Right.
And as long as they're healthy and out there, we're in a really good spot. And I know that's like a big as long as and a what if, but it's the cards we've been dealt.
It's a Captain Obvious all the way around.
Hop on the roller coaster, you guys. We're heading in for some ups and downs, but it's going to be fun because we're all here.
If I can answer Ricky D's question real quick.
Yes, of course. So, what is Ricky D's question?
Shout out to Ricky D Bridge for the activity and all of, literally, all of.
One of our newest diehards or newer diehards.
Yes.
Love you being a part of the fam.
I'm sitting here working in our little table to the side, and I hear his name. I hear their name involved in literally every podcast. Shout out to you. We appreciate your support. I like Oso at the 5 more than I do at the 4. I feel like you pigeonhole your offense when he's at the 4 versus when he's at the 5. I also think you get the most out of him defensively when he's at the 5 too. Now, I see him being at the 5 even when he does spend time on the court with Kevin Durant because he's guarding the person that's playing center on the other team. And the way that unlocks everything that they look to do is a change of pace to what their defensive base is and most of their lineups. It hits different, it adds impact, and it really just kind of puts the game in favor of the Suns who want to play with more pace. And when you're in reserve units, even if it's only Oso out there with the big three and Tyus, it's going to hit different. And I think that's where you can get the most value out of him. If he does carve out minutes in the playoffs, I think it's going to be in that particular role.
All right, guys. Any final lessons that we have learned during this rough stretch?
NBA teams are bad without their stars, and you can criticize and tell players that they need to be better during those stretches, but you also have to just face reality.
Yeah.
For me, it's Mike Budenholzer continuing to find ways to get more out of Devin Booker. Me and Gerald spoke on it on the post-game show last night. I talked about it with Espo the night before or the day before that in our podcast. And it's this is something that to optimize the big three, you have to figure that piece out. You have to get the most out of Devin Booker. And I've mentioned that the best template is to look at 2021 to 2023. Obviously, some of that being under two different coaches, but I think that they found good things to get out of him when featuring him off the ball. And the best way to do that is flowing him off the screens, using him as a more traditional two guard. I had a Steven study that came out yesterday that talked about one of the Suns' screen-to-screener actions, essentially, where all three of the big three players are interchangeable. That's something that you can literally spam 4 times a quarter if you want to in multiple different iterations, and you can get like a 1.5 points per possession off of that because of the pieces that you have on your team. Devin Booker is a dynamic chess piece that has to be used as that, and you have to kind of mitigate as many of the stagnant touches as we've seen so far early this season.
Absolutely. All right. On the other side, we've got some updates. Positive? I don't know. We're going to have to debate it. But first, a quick break. Can you guys believe that we're almost at the end of the year? It's absolutely insane. And if you are a business owner or if your business is right now looking back on the goals that you set in January and trying to figure out exactly how close you are, if you haven't hit them or you're not going to, why is that the case? It's insane how much at the end of the year, everything just kind of comes full circle, and it can be a positive or it can be a negative. But if you have year-end goals, Constant Contact has what it takes to help you meet them faster. No matter how experienced you are with digital marketing, Constant Contact has the tools to make your marketing run smoother. Sell more, raise more, and build more genuine relationships with your audience with Constant Contact's suite of digital marketing tools, all made to fast track your success. Time to put the go in your 2024 business goals with email, social, SMS, and customized marketing campaigns built for you in just a few clicks. Ready, set, go to constantcontact.com/allcity and start your free trial today. That's constantcontact.com/allcity for your free trial.
And we mentioned it's almost the end of the year, which means it's almost time for our PHNX Suns sweet takeover on New Year's Eve. Join the PHNX Suns crew, watch Book, KD, and the Suns take on Ja Morant or whoever's healthy for the Grizzlies that night. It's going to be a fantastic night. Game ticket, food and drink, including alcohol in the suite. And you can get all of that by going and getting your tickets over at gophnx.com/events. We also have a watch party and live show at Gila River Resorts and Casinos, Wild Horse Pass, on Saturday, December 7th against the Heat. That one is always fun. We have our own custom menu now over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. And we're going to have giveaways there as well. Come get some free stuff, and that is free to attend. And if you want to keep track of all of our events, not just Suns, we do events for Cardinals, ASU, U of A, Diamondbacks. gophnx.com/events is the place to be.
All right. We did get news from Sham. Sham just delivering all the news for us over the last 24 hours or so. A new NBA All-Star format, you guys. Are you so excited about this? So apparently they're going to a 4-team tournament style format for the 2025 All-Star game. And it's expected to have 2 semifinal games played up to 40 points, and then the winners advancing to the final match, and they play up to 25 points. So you have team 1, 2, and 3, and then that 4th team is going to potentially be the winner of the Rising Stars competition. How do you guys feel about this?
I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Because I feel like everybody else needs a minute to
I got so many thoughts. Go ahead.
Many thoughts.
Anything that's going to make the players feel more invested and get a better performance out of them rather than it just being a proverbial bye week, if you want to use an NFL term. Anything that makes it feel like a whole lot more than that, and that brings more entertainment value for the fans and the people that are paying hyped up prices to go to these games that players just aren't taking serious.
Yeah.
anything that provides a better product for that, I'm all for it.
But the question is, does it provide a better product?
That's what remains to be
I
seen.
mean,
And
at
that's-
least they're trying.
That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
I am always an advocate for trying things, but maybe the whole playing the rising stars.
See, that's my thing.
But then what?
You're-
Then that game's hard, and then you just go to the next one.
But
and you
what
just
if the Rising
screw
Stars
around?
beat the other team? You're going to tell me you should be so embarrassed if your name is LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and you let the Rising Stars team beat you.
You should.
You should be so embarrassed.
You should, but are those guys going to try?
The Rising Stars guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know how
Are we
good that
sure?
would feel as like a 1 or 2nd year player to take down a squad full of those guys?
Are we sure? Or are
I
they going to
mean,
show
I
up and be
guess.
big dog by these players that are going to be in their ear like, listen, man, I'm not trying to twist my ankle trying to show up you young bucks. Like, don't
You
don't
undercut
do
me on a
this.
3 in All-Star
Right.
weekend, you're done.
Right.
It's over.
There's,
No, I mean,
there's
maybe.
such a thing as peer pressure.
Like
Still.
maybe it all works
They
out.
do have a lot of whatever they've got.
Clout.
Yes, there you go.
Mhm.
Backing their name.
You know, like Gerald, if everybody tries, this is awesome.
Yeah.
But I would put money on most people will not try.
Facts,
No.
Espo.
Okay, here's the, so Espo in the chat says move the Emirates NBA Cup final to Friday night of All-Star weekend. Then it's not your in-season tournament anymore. It's too close to the
Well,
playoffs.
they were talking about moving the tournament
I
part of
know.
it back a little bit to line up closer with like the Super Bowl.
That's still in season.
It's still in season,
hate
but the whole
that.
point of the in-season tournament was to get people to care about NBA in the part of the season where everybody's still glued to football. So, like,
2 tournaments.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is there. I think, again, I'm very skeptical that this will work. I'm very skeptical about this format, but I like that they're trying something
That's
different
it.
because All-Star Weekend, as it's been, is untenable. It's just like, I think they cracked 200 points in the last All-Star game for the first time. It's a joke. It's a bad product, and they need to do something to fix it. So even if this doesn't work out, at least they're trying something different. They're committed to that. And as someone who has been on team, yes, NBA continue to experiment with the in-season tournament, with the play-in, which everybody hated at first, and now they love it. I'm hopeful that this will follow that track and eventually catch on to something. But they got to experiment and they got to try different things.
I applaud them for at least trying.
Yeah.
Because the All-Star game has been boo-boo for a while
Yeah.
now. The other thing I will say,
Hmm.
we don't have to go on a tangent about this, but I just want to mention it one more time. Adam Silver, I swear to God, if the All-Star game starts 48 minutes later than
Oh
what
my
you
God.
said it's going to
Dude.
start this year,
Listen,
Terrible.
I'm going to throw a shoe at you.
Terrible.
listen,
Okay.
It's a
and
4.5-hour event now.
And
what
I'll
are we
say-
doing?
And I'll say, not to be like speak from a privileged perspective, but imagine actually being there and everyone's just sitting there waiting on it to start. Like,
And it's
Terrible.
on a Sunday. Like,
It's on a
kids got
Sunday.
to go to school the next day, bro. Like, we don't have time to wait around
Come
for
on.
an
All the
Come
hour.
corporate
man.
people, which is most
What
of
are
the
we
people
doing?
in the
Right.
building, have jobs the next day to go
Yeah,
to.
and I
What
don't
are
need
we
a
doing?
45-minute halftime show either. Like,
No.
please.
no, people have flights to catch.
This is
and
not
all
the
type
Super.
of
Even
other
the Super
things.
Bowl is not that long.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Mhm.
I do have a solution.
What's your
I
solution?
have fixed NBA
Adam
All-Star game.
Silver, tune
Okay.
in.
Yeah, Adam, come here. This would never happen, and I know that. But this is how you get players to try hard.
Mhm.
No money for charity. Sorry. And not only that, but each NBA player that gets selected to the All-Star game, you bring 10% of what you're making that season, and you bring it in cash. You put
Oh,
it under
boy.
your seat, under your locker, and that goes towards a pool
Mhm.
of total that gets dispersed among the winners.
Okay.
So they're playing with their own money on the line,
Mhm.
The Annie.
and the winner gets to take everybody else's money. Do you know how hard they would try?
So like Squid Game, we have like a
Pretty
piggy
much-
bank above
Ye-
the court. And
Yes. Yes.
dollar
No
bills.
big screen, just a big glass ball of their own money. And like guys like LeBron, the people who've been in the league for longer, they've got higher stakes in there.
Love that.
Right? So they actually have to try harder than, maybe the first time All-Star who puts up a lot less money because they're still on their rookie
Or
contract.
LeBron's like, I'm a billionaire. I don't even care. You can have this. It's jump change to me. but the other guys might play harder.
Nate says 10%'s unreal. I'm trying to get them to give a crap.
I love this idea. It would never happen.
Never.
I love the idea.
Love the idea.
Adam Silver at gunpoint going team to team saying, put the money in the bag, LeBron.
Feel bad for the rookies who are on a rookie
But
contract.
that's the thing is they only have to put in a certain amount.
But it's only percentage based.
If they win,
is percentage based, but their
if they
percent is a
win,
bigger chunk.
okay, maybe let's go 5. We'll go 5%. But if they win,
I love
they
the
get
idea.
more money.
I
Try hard, win the
I
game.
appreciate
Love the
the
idea.
effort and figuring something out that's not what we've been seeing.
Yeah.
It's just tough.
Well,
it's tough.
They need to provide a financial incentive, otherwise it's not going to change.
And I love the charity, and I think they should include the charity part. Like, you gotta also
match it.
They did it with the in-season tournament. They're like, hey, everybody gets like $50K.
Yeah.
Like, here you go.
Match it.
Well, Eric, since you bleed Desert Financial Blue, get your investors involved. This is a
My
prime
investors.
opportunity. This is a prime opportunity.
They've been waiting 84 years for an
This is
opportunity
it.
just like this.
Xavier gets it. Do you believe in yourself? Put the money up. Slogan.
That's what I'm saying. Like, who's the Oh my gosh, who's the ultimate all-star?
Yeah.
There you go.
Either that or a one-on-one tournament, and there's just like $50K everybody, like one-on-one to 3. You win, you get $50K, and you stay on the court.
Would love that.
Well, we'll find out this year if it does any good or not. Who knows? But we'll all probably be watching still regardless. We do have a couple super chats here, though, that I want to make sure we get to. Thank you guys for sending them. Psycho Blue sent us one and said, Basketball Cthulhu wants to know why we don't have custom merch with, quote, sucks on a shirt in the Barkley Kid era Suns logo font.
Because we don't hate the team that we cover. Good Lord.
Don't know if that would
Psycho
sell.
Blue, we don't hate the Suns. All right, Vernon sent us one as well. Thank you, Vernon. They said, I hope these Stan accounts don't make you guys feel a type of way about the actual player and you got fans. Then you got D-Riders.
As Bobo said.
One of my favorite things is when Lindsay's reading a super chat and then she gets to the end and somebody just says something like a little bit off and it's like, oh, am I going to read
Should have
that?
read that one a little bit sooner. But thank you, Vernon. No, I don't think they do. Sometimes, maybe, but it's different types of fandom, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you are not trying to drive a wedge between fans of a team and the team itself. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, but Hunt Star's comment is so funny.
That's wild.
I'm going to read it. I need personalized punishments. Like if Steph's team loses, a low-income housing complex gets built near his house.
Oh, my God.
That would be funny to go through, like, what everybody's punishment. Like, LeBron, you can't drink wine for the rest of the season. Done. It's over.
Man.
You and
Katie,
JJ, no more wine.
Katie, no more weed.
Damn.
No. Even better. You got to get off of X.
No.
You got to get off of Twitter.
Oh, man.
No more
Bye.
Call of Duty for some of you.
Damn.
That would be for
That'd be
Book.
tough.
Devin
That'd be
Booker
for
has to
Book
be
at
on a
that point.
podcast weekly.
Wait, this is so funny. This is so funny. Zion Williamson has to go on a diet.
Oh,
Devin Booker
man.
actually has to start posting on social
Trae
media.
Young has to shave his head.
That's amazing.
No, that's terrible.
Giannis has to continue to play with Dame for the rest of his career.
Oh, gosh.
Dame has to stay in Milwaukee.
Yeah, Dame has to stay in Milwaukee.
No yogurt for Giannis.
Draymond Green can't fight somebody anymore.
That's
All right.
crazy.
Well,
No more
that'll
horses
do
for
it for
Joker.
us.
That's tough.
Today on the PHNX Suns podcast. As Gerald mentioned, there's a lot of great stuff over at gophnx.com for you guys to read and check out. Keep an eye out for the mailbag questionnaire that's going out soon. It'll probably drop for diehards. And don't forget, tomorrow we have another show for you at 3 p.m. So plan to come and hang out with us then. And until we see you tomorrow, hit that thumbs up button if you're here with us on YouTube. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And follow the show on social at PHNX_Suns. Shout out to all of you in the chat today. You guys
Cara,
have
that's
been
hilarious. That's so
Shout out
funny.
to
Good
Cara.
times. Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's
100%.
so funny.
We really appreciate you guys being here with us.
Oh,
You can
man.
also follow me at Lindsay Smith AZ. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget. You can follow Steven at Steven PG3. And you can follow Eric at Eric Ruby with a K. Who wants to take us home?
I could do it, and I'm gonna start something a little different. Ahoy hoy is Espo's thing. I'm gonna let that be Espo's thing. I think right now is a good time to bring something that I used to do when I did college radio, when I covered basketball, covered in air quotes. Remember to always, always, always enjoy basketball. We'll talk to you guys next time.
We all silly like the mayor.